tried to shorten it, and so there might be a bit of a jump at one point, so please bear with that.
I think we should turn it off.
This record can help and at least can send a message that I wanted to send for this to this conference. In these days, we all are witnessing a lot of tragedies which are going on in the Middle East, in Syria, particularly in Iraq, and also in South Asia, in Afghanistan, especially. And we all witnessed that the extremist groups, they destroyed a lot of monuments, they killed a lot of people. And we know that the destruction of monuments, artworks, and also historical sites is not something new. It happened already in the course of history. But the methods and the purpose that they do it today is quite different from the past. And then if we have any study, if we study these methods and the purpose that they do it today compared with the past, we see that a lot of contradictions, there are a lot of differences that show that all these people, whoever that they do this kind of vandalism, cannot justify their works based on religion. And if we look at the public imagination today, that people mostly think that these actions are all happened in the name of Islam, and in fact Islam has some problems with artworks or the monuments. Also, the studies shows the different thing. It's not like that. It cannot be justified as an action based on Islamic studies, but it's something very political that I will discuss it in this paper. But unfortunately, the destruction of the artworks, historical sites, and also the monuments, and also the situation which is going on there in the region, or was actually happening during the Taliban, did not allow the scholars to discuss or to research and find out the position of these monuments or artworks or other sites which we had or which we have in the local culture. So we still do not know the position of these monuments with the local people or in the popular culture in other world. So in this paper, which I entitled Destruction of Bamiyan Buddhas, Taliban Iconoclasm and Hazara Response, I will try to explain first that why the Taliban destroyed this Buddhas in 2001 in Bamiyan. What was the nature of the iconoclasm that they did, or the destruction of the monuments they did. And I will try to compare this action against the nature of Islamic iconoclastic action which happened in the course of history, to show whether it was based on Islamic, it can be justified as an Islamic action, or could be seen as just a modern political iconoclasm or action, actually. And secondly, in this paper, I will try to see the position of Buddhas, the closer Buddhas of Bamiyan, in the Hazara culture, in the local culture, and to see that how they saw it, how they received it, how they perceived it, in fact, and how they responded to this destruction. So I will read out some parts of the paper, and those points are needed to be discussed. I will try to discuss, and also you will see the slides which are related to this presentation and can show the point better. The destruction of Bamiyan Buddhas by the Taliban regime in March 2001 not only challenged the world heritage and undermined the international law, it brought the rising threat of religious extremist groups whose target this time was cultural heritage. Annihilation of these cultural icons and treasure of humankind will remain as an Islamic iconoclastic action in the public imagination, as all broadcasted, unfortunately. However, the systematic destruction of Buddhas, being a modern phenomenon under the grab of an archaic iconoclasm, cannot be simply described as an Islamic iconoclastic action. Being situated between South, West, and Central Asia, trade route, Bamiyan Valley is marked by remarkably true transculturalism, and the statues, stupas, viharas, shrines, and the monastic murals are visual portraits which narrate for cultural colonization and religious syncretism. Not only trade and commodities, but ideas were also transmitted and converged here, and that made Bamiyan as a hub on the map of Asia. Originating in post-Gupta period, gigantism in Mahayana Buddhist art found its way to Bamiyan around 5th century AD, and remain remarkably connected to rituals in time and content. Their identification and chronology has been a continuous debate among the art historians, and it is thought that the idea of all gigantic Buddhist statues of Central Asia and China influenced from the Bamiyan Valley. Bamiyan was home to Shia Hazaras, to the Shia Hazara minority, which has opposed the Taliban not only militarily, but also criticized the Wahhabi ideology, which is the core idea to them. This opposition had to be countered not only physically, but also psychologically. Being a remarkable symbol of historical pluralism and a great paradigm of syncretization of various schools of arts, the closer Buddhas were the most visible monuments element which had survived from the pre-Islamic Afghanistan. Secondly, it was reminiscent of an icon-centric religion, or the Buddhism, which was known to medieval Muslims as Buddha-parasti or idol worshipper. Their apparent glory, which was a remarkable human artwork, and their centric position in the Buddhist monastic complex of Bamiyan evoked essential attention and necessity of preservation and study. In contrast, their Buddhist essence became a fact which could make them target of the Islamic fanatic interpretation. Besides, they were the largest Buddhist statues of the world, and any malevolent act would attract universal attention. Having a clear understanding of these phenomena, or these parameters, on the one hand, and the pressure of the UN sanctions on December 2000, and recognition as illegal regime, while they occupied 90% of the country, Taliban leaders attempted to use Buddhas as a political tool to communicate with the world community, to gain political legitimacy and removal of the sanctions. In this situation, the Taliban planned to shock the world by targeting the Buddhas, first to put pressure on the world community to negotiate, or to the fundamentalists by depicting themselves as true and loyal to Islam by idol breaking or buchikani, as it was performed at the time of the Hajj pilgrimage. They sacrificed the number of cows as expiatory of delay in the destruction. Nevertheless, Taliban were thinking more about its political impact rather than its theological effect. Should we see Buddha's destruction in Islamic context, and was it a successful project after all these actions? Destruction of Buddhas is unacceptable from the Islamic point of view. Firstly, there was no Buddhists in Afghanistan, and they were not religious icons. Moreover, they were exposed to Islamic iconoclastic action centuries before, and they were part of the cultural heritage by now. As the Buddhas were not objected by Muslim ulama or sultans, who, when Bamiyan was a great Islamic center during the Buddhist empire, therefore their destruction has no Islamic justification. According to Islam, all those figural statues which were produced prior to the rise of Islam are part of history and should not be harmed. Meanwhile, most of the Muslim countries preserved their pre-Islamic heritage as part of their history, and they have a lot of statues being Buddhist or Hellenistic or from other periods. The legitimacy of Taliban Islamic conclave or shura is also controversial. Firstly, the identity of these ulamas are ambiguous, and their edict was not based on Islamic sources. Secondly, the Buddhas had already been recognized by the Muslim scholars as cultural heritage. Therefore, accuracy of these ulamas and their acts was rejected by Islamic countries. What Taliban gained was a large number of volunteers from various Arab countries, western regions of Pakistan, and more funds from extremist groups. Eventually, none of these attempts to prevent the destruction of Buddhas could stop Taliban, and even did not remove their regime, which followed a policy of avenge the UN and attempt for the world community, and contempt for the world community. But this act certainly excluded the regime from the circle of civilized humanity and illegitimized the regime in the minds of humankind. It was resonant of a universal continence to remove this regime after September 11 attacks. In other words, disingenuous plan of destruction of Bamiyan Buddhas under the name of Islam was almost an unsuccessful action which isolated the Taliban further. From the point of view of international law, some features made it distinct from other cultural destruction and reported as criminal jurisdiction for or crimes against peace and security of humankind. Given the fact that the Buddhas were not demolished in war, or accidentally shot, or were not in the enemy's territory, or a military stronghold, but were cultural monuments that were dynamited during the control of Taliban of the Bamiyan Valley by a pre-planned and systematic process and documented for universal broadcast, make it different from all other cases which happened in the past. As Osman B. Parakchi has pointed out, it is the first time in human history that the state is taking the initiative to decree its subjects to destroy their own past. Moreover, it was outrage to humankind's value, not only by hurting the sentiment of the world Buddhist community and giving rise to the sectarian conflict in the region, but also unleashing a symbolic violence by erasing the icons of history and identity. The regional support from Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates, which had already recognized Taliban as a legal regime in Kabul, established their political and economic relation, and virtually functioned as a shield against the UN sanctions. So this was what actually happened in Bamiyan, and how the Taliban justified it, and we saw that it is not just it's not possible to justify based on Islamic studies or Islamic actually preachings. So the second part is about the Hazara ideas about Bamiyan Buddhas, what they taught, what is the position of the Bamiyan Buddhas in the Hazara culture, and also how they responded to this iconoclastic action. The Persian primary sources project a new picture of the Bamiyan statues, which is tremendously distinct from what we had earlier. A transformation from religious cult to popular culture, as they possibly depict the statues of Bamiyan Buddhas as character of popular romance from the 9th century onward. Perhaps this could be an answer to the popular romance which was hegemonized by the Arab romance of Layla and Majnun. Could be. Historically, the people of Khorasan, or today's Afghanistan, appreciated the romance as the stories of Bamiyan and Azra, which is originally a Greek story and then came to Syria, confined to Arabic, confined to Persian, and Bijan and Manija, and Farhad and Shirin, were all well known to them. Even it could be an intellectual way of preserving the statues or the Buddhas by folding them in layer of literature. Almost all the Persian primary sources after this century, 9th century, refer to these statues as Surkh But, or red idol, and Khim But, or bright grey idol. The former as male, a lover, and the latter as female and the beloved. The terms of Persian and precisely indicate the color of the statues. Bright grey can be identified with the color of stuccos used for drapery of statues over the sandstone body. And the red color can be, or could be, the pigment on the bigger statues, which presumably could also have been painted just as niches themselves had murals, and we also have some examples of this in Central Asia. This is rational conclusion, as painted niches and painted icons are not sight which are abnormal in these times, regions, and the art tradition. The character of these Buddha statues is not identified as the historical Buddhas in these Persian Arabic sources, but instead a love story had been fashioned which attracted even a person like Mahmud of Ghazna. While these Buddhist statues were just in the vicinity of Ghazna, yet they did not attract his wrath. In public fame encouraged Mansuri, a court poet of Mahmud, to compose it as a romance for the Sultan, for Mahmud. And this shows a deep shift in identifying these statues as an inspiring source for literature. However, we are not aware of what the story of this couple actually was. And as one of the main work on this issue called Hadith Sanawi al-Bamiyan, or the story of the statues of Buddhas, composed by al-Biruni, did not survive. The Perso-Arabic primary sources show that the romance of Sukhbut and Khinbut, the statue of Buddha, the Perso-Arabic primary sources show that the romance of Sukhbut and Khinbut was popular in medieval Persian world, in the medieval Persianate world. Practically, the reconstruction of the romance of Sukhbut and Khinbut from these fragments seems to be impossible, but the popular Hazara Gi, or Hazara story related to Bamiyan Buddhas and other sites around them help us to see the general view of this romance. According to Hazara folktales, the later statue, according to Hazara folktales, the larger statue is called Salsal, and he was supposedly the son of a Pahlawan. The smaller statue was called Shahmama, who was allegedly the daughter of the Mir of Bamiyan, or the ruler of Bamiyan. Here we see that even across the genders and centuries, separating Persian sources and Hazara folk tales, still the gender pairing of the two statues as a man and woman have remained the same. Sukhbut and Khinbut, which were mentioned earlier in the Perso-Arabic sources, are called later in Hazaraki folktale as Salsal and Shahmama. To the Mir of Bamiyan, who knew the love of Salsal for his daughter, was unhappy, as he was not impressed by Salsal, or in fact he did not like him. He suffered from two major problems in his country: destructive floods and the double-headed dragon that ate his people. Shahmama was too aware of this situation and loved Salsal, but could not ignore her father. Shahmama too was aware of this situation and loved Salsal, but could not ignore her father. With the interference of the nobles, or the Buzurgan, the condition for marriage with Shahmama was declared to be a successful attempt at stopping the flood and killing the dragon. For achieving these hard conditions, Salsal needed a legendary weapon, which could be made of a steel mind from Fuladi mountain and should be forged by a wise pir at Ahangaran in Mughul. The protagonist of this story, Salsal, makes this extraordinary march and returns with the legendary steel weapon. And he first closed the river with a dam or band, where today Bamiyan is located, and then in a deadly fight killed the dragon. He skinned the dragon and sent it to be used as a carpet for the day of marriage, but he succumbed to the wounds inflicted by the demon spirit of the dead dragon. In a conclave of nobles, the Mir and his courtier accepted him as the hero who had earned the merit to marry Shahmama, and thus the day of marriage was announced. The Mir and nobles ordered to carve two memorial niches for them on the facade of the mountain to celebrate their marriage and for remembering the triumph of Salsal over the dragon. The niches were painted, and the bigger one was covered by a red embroidered curtain, while the small niche was decorated with a green curtain. The lovers were supposed to remove these curtains by sunrise to let the people see their faces, in fact, as couples standing in the niches, and then they should talk and walk on the carpet made of dragon skin toward their future house. But it never happened. When the curtains were removed, people saw Salsal and Shahmama had turned into stones and were dead. The people screamed on seeing that, and thereafter they lighted candles in those niches and recited tragic poems in their name. They called it the niches of love and told this story to the travelers, and also named their children after these lovers. A critical approach to the story can take us closer to the origin of this myth. Firstly, the name of Salsal means baked clay, in fact, in Arabic, which technically is very close to this local artwork and has some meaning of and has the same meaning of Khinbut, because Khinbut means the grey idol or the grey statue in Persian sources. Secondly, reference to Ahangaran in Mughul is a place, as a place providing the legendary weapon confirms the quality of Urid weapon, which have been mentioned in Persian sources of the 10th centuries onward. The evidence possibly thus takes the origin of the myths of Salsal and Shahmama back to the 10th century. Moreover, the same legend is also ascribed to the first Imam of the Shias, Ali, or the fourth Caliph of the Sunni world. But there is a shrine with Timurid architecture in the Bandi Amir, making the legend of Ali a later tradition. But interestingly, the Hazaras do not associate these statues with any religion. Rather, they have been preserving them as a constituent part of popular myth and imagination. Indeed, we have a confluence of two gigantic statues, a natural lake and a dragon-shaped rock, which lends credibility to this legend of the locals. The two natural sites of Bandi Amir and Darrei Ajdar, or the Valley of Dragon, are associated with this story. The legend doesn't remember the face of these statues, which suggests that the possibility of chronology of the myths was after the Yaqub iconoclastic act of the 9th century. Alongside the name of Salsal, the Hazaras also often call it Surkhbut, which encourages us to establish a link between their myths and the 10th century Perso-Islamic sources. Changing the character of Buddha from a calm wise man giving sermon and choosing the middle path for salvation of his followers is completely distinct from the mythical life of Salsal. As a young Pahlavan, a lover, a hero, a warrior, and a volunteer for achieving extraordinary actions. In fact, it is probable that the environment of Indian subcontinent would naturally create a peaceful character like Buddha, and the harsh environment and rock topography of Khorasan would create such material myths, such martial myths like that of Salsal. The Khorasanis used to mix all extraordinary issues with the mythical characters. Here, the climax of the narrative is also different. Buddha enters parinirvana, while Salsal would remain standing eternally. Buddha becomes the central figure of a religion and stands as an icon of worship for the Buddhists, but Salsal becomes a source of romance and an icon of love. Buddha becomes a main icon for religious art, but Salsal appears as an inspiration for folk literature. Distinctively, Salsal has a beloved and kills the demon dragon for his love, while Buddha left his wife, son, and worldly pleasure in the midnight. For Buddha, achieving the way for salvation of mankind was a driving force, while for Salsal, it was his love for Shahman and his sense of duty and responsibility. Indeed, the Hazara myths confirm the Khilbat and Surkhbut of the Persian sources and clearly show the transformation of a religious cult into folk culture, a syncretization of the Indian religious symbol and the Persian mythical essence and character. Another popular local story is Buzi Chini, or the ceramic goat. It is a children's story and the events take place in a cave next to the Buddha's niches. Through an old storyteller, or in Hazaragi local dialect, they call him Babai Pesagu, or the old man who's telling the stories. The children would get familiar with the character of a smart goat that lived with his kids in a cave next to the Salsal al Shahmama. The character of the goat and its life in a peaceful pasture and the presence of the black wolf are not coincidence. Perhaps instead it might have historical roots in the social problem of the region. Revisiting the story of the Buzi Chini in the form of animation has directly involved the Hazara children with the story of Salsal and Shahmama as part of their cultural heritage through generations. In essence, this long-standing association with Buddha statues established a sympathetic relation with them and placed them within their daily life tales. The grandmothers told this story with love to the children, and they carried it to the next generation. As a result, any desire to damage these statues, which had been time immemorial, occupied position of central importance for the identity of the Hazara of Bamiyan, would be directly opposed by the people. So their interest for them would naturally almost reject many. Their interest for them would naturally almost reject any iconoclastic purpose, as they had already internalized the statues as part of their folk identity, and immortalized it within their oral folk tradition, irrespective of their original religious affiliation or connotations. Moreover, the tomb of Mir Sayyid Ali Yahsuz, a Sufi saint, and the two remaining domed Islamic tombs were probably part of the Islamic complex located exactly opposite to these statues. So any local Muslim pilgrim, while traveling or traversing the area, would see the tomb of his Pir on one side and the faceless statues of Buddhas on the other. Thus, perhaps this can be deduced that even the Pir and his followers did not have any problem with the presence of these statues, as to them they were only artwork, a source of romantic story, and absolutely a wonder of the world. It makes sense to state that they had more liberal interpretation of Islam, unlike today most of the people have. Ironic to the Islamic iconoclasm, the present generation of Hazaras believed that the statues were carved by their ancestors with Hazara features in antiquity. They therefore believe that these statues are the emblem of their identity. They think that the statues were defaced by the Pashtun king Abdul Rahman in the 19th century, but the statues were defaced, as we showed, in the medieval era. In fact, their argument is rooted in the old stories of Abdul Rahman's subjugation of Hazaras in the 19th centuries. They also knew that how Kabul government had superimposed the Pashtun Kuchis or the nomads by gifting the Hazara lands and pastures to the Kuchis through farmans or the royal orders. This had continued through formal broadcasting of wrong information by the later Afghan government. Unfortunately, most of the times they showed that the Hazaras are not original from this country, and their population is lesser than the others, and their religion is against what the government wants, and all these kind of issues. This had continued through formal broadcasting of wrong information by later Afghan governments. Therefore, the fact of preserving these statues would be like protecting their own identity for the Hazaras. During the civil war, based on their historical and cultural values, the Hazara leader Abdul Ali Mazari, who was later killed by the Taliban, commissioned a group of soldiers to guard the statues in 1996. And even in spite of being an Islamic madrasa alumnus, he never objected to these statues. For the Taliban, however, there was no better target than the Buddhas of Bamiyan to cover its political desires. The Bamiyan Buddhas were historical symbols and icon of folk identity for Hazaras, but were opportunistically propagated by the Taliban as symbols of idolatry, and the Hazaras were implicated in it as wrongdoers. Thus, the Hazara soldier was not only fighting for his corporal survival, but also for his ethnic identity and folk culture. So indeed, the sensitivity of these issues would make them anxious to respond to the Taliban by singing that there is a singing saying that if you wish to break the statues, then come from the Shiva mountain and you will see who stands in front of you and you will remove this idea from your head. This actually was a song and played in those times when the Hazaras were standing against the Taliban inside their strongholds. All the anxiety and anger to protect the Buddha statues proved unsuccessful, as the Pakistani aircraft opened the way of Taliban to the valley of Bamiyan in 2001. Soon the world was shocked by seeing the horrible sense of blasting the statues. The catastrophe of this destruction was also accompanied by genocide of civilian Hazaras, burning their houses, bazaar, and the other places that belonged to them, and which brought about their exodus and exile from the valley. In fact, they were massacred because of the Shia religion, which was opposed to the Taliban's Wahhabi ideology, and also because of the racial issues. So when this destruction happened, after some time, the Hazaras thought about an alternative, because the Buddhas were very important for them as as we said, as icon of identity and cultural importance. So they tried to recreate the image of Buddhas because they could not actually restore these Buddhas after destruction. The Hazara response to iconoclasm and reaction to the destruction of Buddhas could be seen in two main aspects, cultural and political. It was not only the condemnation statement released by the Hazara leaders, but the intellectual stratum, which tried to replace it with suggestions of an alternative if the physical restoration was not possible. The idea of an alternative was strongly projected through individual work, particularly in the painting. Among the leaders of this cultural group, Khadim Ali, a very young Afghan Hazara boy, Akbar Khorasani, Hafiz Baghdad, and Ali Baba Arang are known faces. On their canvas, a deep mourning is visible and an awareness of what they have lost. In Khadim Ali's words, to me, Buddhas are my past, my identity. When somebody is standing to remove them or to destroy them, then it's my responsibility to stand against them and to recreate them. As a person trained in a modern art and fully aware of the inherent Islamic dislike for representational art, Khadim Ali went further to mix the Islamic symbols and script with Buddha's images. His decision to show the Buddhas within the sanctum of Kaaba is an absolute innovation. This painting is a loud appeal against the destruction of Buddhas and projected this sanctuary that this loss was as much harmful for all Buddhists around the world as the destruction of Kaaba in Mecca could be for the Muslims. By writing the Islamic script inside this canvas, by writing the Islamic script upside down and from left to right, as we see in the picture, he has tried to show how the Islamic fundamentalists have often interpreted Islam in a wrong way. So not from the right way, but in fact from the left way. The red tulip flowers around Buddha have links with the ancient Persian myths of the blood of Siyawash or Siyawash, as this flower is also the symbol of a martyrdom, or the Shaheed. In his painting, Khadim Ali has two main characters, Buddha in a white drapery and a dark-skinned, bearded and horned fat demon wearing bangles and ankles. Here, the white color symbolizes the innocence of Buddha, and the demon represents a non-native character, which is called Muzdur in this painting, as his bangles suggest that the sign of a bondage or servitude, or being an attendant figure, and his horn is sign of ignorance. To him, the Taliban is an ignorant Muzdur who has a wrong interpretation of Islam, and his distinct clothing style, horns and bangles perhaps symbolize his different ideological affiliation. The other demonic figure is a Taliban spiritual leader who confirmed the destruction. By drawing the twin towers and crushing plains, he brings both events in the same context to show their link. As to him, the Taliban is not only the enemy of thought and culture, but also the enemy to all human being and also to all human development. In contrast to other work, he shows Buddha with closed eyes. And on one canvas, he paints a lock on a legend of Rustam and Sohrab and depict the empty niches of Buddha's beneath. By comparing the murder of Sohrab with destruction of the Buddhas on the one hand, and also on the other hand, the lock was well as the multiple bear across the Buddha in other paintings. That with this destruction, the glorious cultural background has also came to an end, which actually was the heroic, you can say, spirit of the Khorasanis. Similarly, the Bamiyan-born Hafiz Baghdad said that his heart blasted when he saw the images of the destruction. He immediately felt that he should fill the empty niches. he wished to paint the Buddhas in its original size and place him in Bamiyan. His large painted Buddha found a place in the Museum of Geme or Gime Museum to remind the visitors of Bamiyan's ancient glory. To Akbar Khorasani, colleague of white, to Akbar Khorasani, collage of white, black and red colors within the niches represented three periods: peace, glory and violence. On the other hand, Ali Baba Awan tries to show the mystery of the statues through a combination of dark niches and compares it with destiny and compares its destiny with that of the Hazaras. Buddhas become the subject of Persian poem in two forms of classic and modern poetry. Hazara poets have composed many poems after destruction, mourning and link with Hazara identity and wish for the restoration are common themes. Its existence in Hazara area is given as the reason of its demolition too. This is another poem actually, it's composed after destruction. It says, "The dark clouds appeared above the mountain. It rained and wind wailed from the darkness. The rain stopped as the moon appeared shiny like the Christ. It then resisted against the order of the darkness of the night. The Buddha torn into thousands of pieces. The Buddha shared the identity and the destiny of the Hazaras." The shining moon then fell into depth of darkness of the night. The sun came out in the morning, but the face of the mountain was frozen. The sun died and the sky became old and fragile. Buddha did not exist anymore. The throat of the valley got torn. A loud voice was saying, "May the idol dies, may the idol dies. May the Shia dies, may the infidel dies." The satellite shows at the night the live images of what we have heard about the legend of jihad. So this was actually a Hazara Gate poem broadcasted widely after this destruction. Here the dark cloud, the night and the loud voice represent the Taliban, and the shiny moon symbolizes the innocence like that of the Christ, but it is covered by the darkness, which is that of the bigotry and ignorance. He then tells about the poet, in fact, tells about the link between Hazaras and the Buddha. Consequently, the world will see what they have heard already about the legends of jihad. To him, this is a legend. To him, this is a challenge, as the day of traditionalism have returned. It is not surprising for Hazara youths to perform the story of St. Salman Shah Mama in a theatre, or in form of theatre. They are trying to say that the Hazara lovers for Buddha statues is for the cultural value. They are trying to say that the Hazara lovers, love for Buddha statues is for its cultural value and its position in human civilization. They were, of course, the mark of Buddhism in the antiquity, but now they are source of their legends, folktale, and evidence of their ethnic origins. From a political point of view, a wide use of image of Bamiyan Buddhas, signature campaign for their restoration, creating websites, personal web blogs, etc., are used to attract the attention of the people in their to their situation, to the Buddha's statues actual situation. The Hazara began a non-violent movement to make this aim true and used almost all opportunities to announce it. To find out their origin, they called for a DNA project, as a result of which is still under investigation. In their protest, they consciously filled the nation of Buddha with the face of a Hazara old man. They represented the lost Buddhas in the form of an old man to ask a new generation for this project, and in fact, they equalized the Hazara old man with Buddha, as both has suffered from the discrimination and fanatic ideology. In fact, the Hazara man from the governmental and very systematic discrimination, and the Buddhas suffered from the very systematic and elaborated destruction by the Taliban. Which in fact, into Hazara eyes, the both regimes, or the origin of the both regimes is the same. The Hazaras welcomed the Afghan government's convention on reconstruction of Buddhas, and supported this decision as they would see the icon of their identity again, and certainly it would bless Bamiyan Valley by its tourist attraction. They thought that it would be compared with Mustar Bridge in terms of reconstruction, and were hopeful. Eventually, the polemic on the construction of the Buddhas ended with the UNESCO's statement saying that the Buddhas won't be restored. The given reason was a limitation of original materials and the public dislike for the fake statues. The decision is supported by the Afghan government, as according to them, there are urgent priorities, this decision is supported by the Afghan government, as according to them, there are urgent priorities which have preferred to this project. While some experts believe that this smaller statue could be restored, as the German university said about it. While some experts, particularly the German university, believe that the smaller statue could be restored, calling it as a shameful decision. The Hazara said that the statues are located in Bamiyan, a Hazara populated area, so any reconstruction will object, in fact, the governmental politics, and project the Hazaras and release them from the historical isolations that they are in for centuries. And this decision, the UNESCO's decision, in fact, favored by the Kabul government. They referred to the failure of Afghan government to even build a proper road to Bamiyan, which was the most secure province in the country. Indeed, Kabul wished to support the restoration of tomb of Rahman Baba in Pakistan, which is a Pashtun poet, while monuments within Afghanistan are in danger. The Hazaras welcomed the UNESCO's recognition of Bamiyan Valley as a World Heritage Site, but do not expect any positive word from the government's side. So this is what actually I tried to say about the statues, and also what was the Hazara's response to this destruction. So far we see that the government of Afghanistan failed for any kind of project to restore or even preserve the sites very well, and the UNESCO is, after all, it seems that they have other priorities, and the restoration of Bamiyan is completely forgotten. And this is one of the main reasons that the people in Bamiyan are fighting for, and then trying to somehow attract the attention of the government and also the other international offices who are working in Afghanistan. But unfortunately, from the 2001 until today, and also of all these events happening in Afghanistan, we can come to one conclusion, that the Afghan government apparently does not have any kind of interest in restoration of these statues because of a lot of reasons. One reason could be, the UNESCO's decision, and but more or above the UNESCO's decision, because that's the only that protects. The Afghan government has not any desire. Thank you very much. I hope this could help, and I will wait for the questions you raise, and I can just write to you in terms of email.